From recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex, I'm your host, Steve Urban, and here is your Riderflex episode of the day. And on today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Steven Morrow. He's a global executive leadership coach based in Denver. You can learn more about Steven by visiting StevenMorrowLeadership.com. I really enjoyed my conversation with Steven, and I think you will too. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Riderflex podcast. And on today's Riderflex podcast, Steven Morrow is on the show. Steven, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Steven Morrow Leadership, right? It's professional coaching, executive coaching?
Yeah, it's executive coaching, and I really think about it as leadership coaching. So there are some strategy coaches out there. That is not me. What I help leaders do is actually lead. And so what we know about leaders have followers, right? So how do you get it so your employees or your staff, or if you're in a matrix organization where people are like, hey, I want to work with Steve Urban because he's Steve Urban. He's an amazing human, and I would follow him anywhere. That's really the goal.
Gotcha. And is it, well, you know what? Before we even get into your business now, why don't we go back for a second? Just give us the, some family, early childhood, where you're from. Give us some of that, and then we'll roll back into the professional piece.
Okay, cool. So I grew up in Detroit, and all my family is a bunch of math geeks. So all math teachers. I'm actually I still was a math student, but not a math teacher.
Your mom and dad were both math teachers?
Mom and dad and sister.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I went to college for that, and then I got into IT. So I spent about 20 years. Started out as actually a programmer and assembler, for anybody that knows about the really ones and zeros back when I was out of college.
You went to Michigan?
I did go to Michigan. Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. What'd you major in?
In math.
In math. Okay. All right. Yep. Go ahead.
Little known, I'll put it out there. Little known fact about Steven. So I actually got my master's in math at age 21. So
wow.
Which I joke about is one of my great regrets, because I just studied all the time, honestly. And I wish I would have spent a little more time having fun and had a little more balance, which is something I work with now.
Really? Okay. But early on in school, you were thinking, I'm going to follow my parents. I'm going to go into a similar work. I mean, was that your early plan?
Honestly, I think maybe it's gotten a little bit better now. I didn't really have a plan. I just knew I was good at math. Right. And so I went to college, on that, because I didn't have a better plan. I didn't have anybody to help advise me on, well, here would be some other options. So okay. I just put my head down and kept going.
Okay. All right. So you got your master's. Did you get your master's at Michigan as well?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. And then what happened? You got recruited by somebody?
I got recruited. Well, yeah, actually a firm called EDS, which is Ross Perot's company. Yeah, for those who are old enough to remember Ross.
Yeah.
He sold it to GM. They were hiring. They had full page ads in the paper, so I couldn't miss. And I got into programming. I wasn't a computer science major, but they trained you kind of how to program, and I got pretty deep into IT pretty quick.
Did you move from Michigan down to Fort Worth or down to Texas where they were at the time?
No, because General Motors had bought EDS, so this was all in Detroit.
Oh, okay, got it. All right, yeah, so you're still in Michigan at this point.
Yeah, just before Ross ran for president, he sold his company for, I don't know, $4 billion.
Yeah.
Back in those days.
So you're off and running with your career. You're at EDS, starting to kick ass, doing your thing.
Yeah. So here's the big, I'm gonna go in the deep end of the pool right away. So right on the day, really, where I was kind of the first day I felt like a grown up.
Okay.
I remember I was at the bar, and we were all wearing suits back in those days. We all wore suits. So, right.
Yeah.
And really the first day I was out at the bar with, the team, and really feeling like, wow, okay, this is real. Like I'm a grown up now. I got my own car, I got my own place, I probably had a beeper on because I was on call, and back to those days, we had beepers.
Single. You're a single guy. What do you like?
No, I was married.
Okay. Oh, you were?
Married.
All right.
Really young. Yeah. To the woman girl I dated in college.
Okay. So you're married.
So this night, so I get back to my apartment. She's not there, and there were 7 messages on my answer machine.
This is, of course, this is the little tape answering machine where you got to press play.
But it was digital. We had a little upgrade.
Okay.
Digital, yeah.
All right.
And she'd been admitted to the hospital.
Ooh.
Yeah, with and I could tell you the whole story why there were so many messages, but with high-grade brain cancer is what the diagnosis was.
Whoa! How old was she?
23, and she had been a power forward at Michigan, actually. So here's a unbelievable athlete.
Wow.
All and strong, power forwards. Obviously, I used to say we could put her on the business end of a couch moving upstairs. So just a really strong.
Now, this is your wife now.
No.
Oh, okay.
And this,
okay.
So that was Friday night, and Monday morning at 8 a.m. we were, in brain surgery, right? And she, and when they actually in the surgery, they came out, they told me, this will kill her. This is not. There's going to be no escape from this.
Like, this is it. They're telling you at that point it's over. Like,
it's not dead yet, but I said, well, what does that mean? They said, well, within a year it'll recur. Right?
Wow.
So they gave her 1 year. She lived 10.
She lived 10 years.
And she chose joy every day.
Really?
And this is really where my journey starts.
Okay.
At that point, I didn't really have the, I didn't have the depth of the understanding of life, but to watch a young person choose joy in the middle of all this battle. And I will tell you, Steve, like she got, the chemo just destroyed her. So she got all these, she got measles again, even though she had already had it as a kid. We were in the hospital all the time.
Wow.
And a lot of pain. And she just always chose joy.
Wow.
There was a moment, kind of one of my favorite moments was, it wasn't favorite at the time. I was, I got to tell you, I went through so much rage, kind of mad at God, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when she had some brain degradation that happened over the 10 years.
Okay.
So I would say she was taken apart muscle by muscle and thought by thought. So I asked her at one point, this is after she started to forget who I was at night, right? Which we see this when Alzheimer's, we call it sundowner syndrome, where people get tired and they get, the brains just don't work as well. She was always okay during the day, but in the evening, she just wouldn't know where she was. So I asked her during the day one time, I said, well, what if you can't remember anybody? And she looked at me with just total presence and said, well, then I'll just meet new people every day.
Oh.
Right?
Man, I wish everybody had that kind of positive outlook on life, right?
Right.
Okay, so that was all right. So that experience, that relationship obviously shaped you in so many ways.
Yeah, for sure.
That lasted for 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. After going through that, nothing can phase you probably at this point. You see people complaining about little things or complaining about little issues at work. You're probably thinking to yourself, hey, man.
Well, I think part of the journey is actually really to be free of judgment, right? We all face what we're facing. And if it's my son who's 12 now, not being able to watch TV after school and he's all upset about it, or you have an exec that was stepped on in a meeting and gets mad about it, right? That's all real. So I could be judgmental and say, hey, you need to take a lesson on, but obviously other people are facing much more difficult things. Or we can actually use that as a jumping off point for, okay, let's talk about what ultimately for me, the end of it all for us is, what state do you want to live your life in?
Okay.
This is really all, and how do, we can all say, oh, I want to be happy, right? Everybody says, I want to be happy, I want to suffer less, right? So then the real work is, so how do we get there?
How do you define happiness?
It's a great question, for sure. We could start to uncover, because often people say, I want to be happy, but what they really want, maybe often, is I want fulfillment or I want meaning, more so than happiness. If we start to really uncover that.
Do people define their happiness as a point or a place? Do they often tell you, if I can just get here, if I can just get to this point, if I can just, once I make this much money, once I live in this location, once I get this house, it's all going to be fine? Is that how they define it a lot of times?
Often, yeah, people are thinking about, yeah, if I get rid of the problems I have now, then I will be okay. And they, and we all do this. You've been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it, right? Like, we can't see around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that is really good to think about is that is an illusion of two things. One, if first of all, I'm going to have more problems in 3 months, or more issues, or more clients, or more whatever, right?
Yeah.
In 3 months.
Yeah.
That's coming. And the second thing, this guy Mark Manson, who you might know, he's a blogger. I really like him, but he said, look, we like to solve problems as humans. We really enjoy it. Actually, and people have talked about this, really executives retire, and then it's boring, right? They can't, they drive their spouse is crazy, all this kind of stuff. Because we like to move forward. We like to solve problems. The question is, which problems do we want to be solving?
Gotcha.
And you design your life so you're solving the problems you want to be solving.
So after this experience, are you still at EDS after the 10 years? Talk to me about, go ahead.
Yeah, so I stayed at EDS. I mean, one thing, they were great. I mean, this company doesn't exist anymore, right? It got gobbled up by HP.
Yep.
But it was great to have that stability. But what I started to do after my first wife passed away is I could see it. Like, I had a front row seat to an enlightened person experiencing enormous hardship.
Yep.
Right. And I got really curious about, okay, I want that.
I see.
And I didn't even know coaching existed. I didn't know anything about that. I just got really curious about, how do I get from my current state? Because I was okay, but I mean, obviously I was angry about what happened. I was confused. And then I had my own personality quirks that I still work with, my temper, all that stuff, that didn't look like a human who was really embracing life. Right?
Okay.
But I wasn't, I was normal, right? I wanted to be, but she was legendary, right? She was amazing. Mm. So I wanted that. So I started doing a bunch of personal work. And so I started with an organization called Mankind Project. Okay. Which is a men's organization. And they have a really intense workshop called the New Warrior Training Adventure. I see. So, that was the first time I ever stepped into something where, we're in the woods, right? It's a kind of a classic deal of, confronting life on your terms in the woods with, fire and drums and people yelling and all kinds of stuff. Now, right? at this, how old are you at this stage? And are you single now at this point? Now
Your wife had passed.
I came and moved to Denver. After she passed away, I moved from Detroit to Denver. And then I don't know, I was in Denver like 6 months, and I did this workshop.
I see. Okay. All right. And you were still an IT executive at this point.
I was, yeah. At that point, I was in sales, so kind of a different game.
Okay. So you go on this thing. By the way, where was that? Do you remember where that first little retreat was up in the mountains in Colorado? I'm just curious. Do you remember?
It was in Deckers, Colorado, at the YMCA camp, which then burned down in the Deckers fire at some point. So
I see.
I didn't go back to the whatever you would call that, kind of where it all began. But
gotcha. All right.
That's a really good place to go. It's I'd be happy to talk about it with anybody. It's intense though. It's definitely not for the faint of heart.
Okay.
People who really want to do the work.
Okay. And this was your first organization, anything that okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So then I just, again, started, and it's a cool organization because it's nonprofit, and then you can come back and staff. You can only do the New Warrior Training once, but you can come back and staff it.
I see.
And it's all, it's a shoestring organization. Nobody's making any money, but like the staff is like 50 guys. And so staffing itself is also an experience, because in that organization, we give each other really deep, authentic feedback. Mm. If you ask for it, you're going to get it. Mm-hmm. Good. And that is really where I learned to look someone in the face and say, okay, this is how I'm experiencing you right now. Whew. And this is how it relates to the goals that you have in your business. And I can't, I used to say I got my skin ripped off and handed back to me so many more times than I can count. Because it's really uncomfortable, right? Growth is uncomfortable. So, but that's a really good place for it. Yeah.
And that started shaping you. Now, at this point, are you thinking, yeah, walk us into how this starts leading into, go ahead. Yep.
So what happens so after you staff that weekend like 10 times, and then there's also men's groups around all over the world, but there's like 35 men's groups of this, New Warrior men's group in Denver. So I started leading in those groups and leading on the weekends, and the feedback I got was, all this senior staff is really good, all the facilitators are really good, but you need to figure out how to make a living doing this. There's some kind of magic that you have.
I see. Okay, great. You started getting some feedback from the guys, and that started steering you. Okay.
Yeah, and I did some other stuff, like I did the Authentic Leadership Program at Naropa. That's really where the first plant I found about coaching, like, there's actually a coaching program. It was actually, there was a program at Naropa, but I met somebody there at that Authentic Leadership Program. And this was, again, just once I got to New Warriors, I'm like, there's other stuff like this, right? This is not the only one. I didn't even know any of this world existed, of this whole retreat workshop,
Right.
I didn't know. So this other woman said, okay, I think you should go to a coaching school called New Ventures West.
And go to the coaching school are you thinking to get a certificate, or are you?
At that point,
you still weren't thinking, I'm going to make a living doing this?
I wasn't, not really, because I just didn't know enough. But this woman who's Mary, her name is Mary Shippey. She's another coach in Denver, really excellent coach. She said, I think you need New Ventures West, which I've now come to find out is one of the deepest, most robust. It's a year-long program. It's very intense.
I see.
You do a 4-day weekend every 3 months. So it's not like you have to quit your job, right? So I'm still working at EDS.
All right.
I went to this deep school, and then the miraculous thing happened. So lucky, 2 weeks after I finished this coaching program, a company-wide email goes out to 135,000 employees. We're building internal coaching capacity. We're looking for certified coaches.
Wow.
You know how many people responded to that out of 135,000? One.
Steven Morrow.
Steven Morrow. So there was a couple of HR people that were already in the program, but I was able to join that and then coach all over the world, really senior executives. So I built a piece of, a portfolio or whatever you want to call it, of leaders that was.
How about that?
So lucky.
And now you're taking your skill set that all the guys said, hey, you're pretty good at this. And now you're doing that at ADS, getting paid, making a living, doing what you're natural at. Were you good at it because your people skills are so welcoming and warm and people are comfortable opening up to you? Is it your listening skills? Is it your people skills? All of the above? I'm assuming, is that what makes what makes you successful at doing that?
I think there's a whole bunch of different kinds of coaches, right? I think a couple things are really my strength. One is an absolute to the bones dedication of helping other people get to this state where they could face brain cancer and say, I'll just meet new people every day.
Okay.
That is with my entire life. Actually, it's part of my kind of oath, and we never did this formally. It was really after I got out of the firestorm of actually being in the illness and got some time to reflect. But I say my wife made this sacrifice. I wonder, we could get into a multi-lifetime view of saying, my wife chose this. Like, we made a pact. I call it the Sacred Pact, in the space between lives, of her saying, I'm gonna go tackle this illness, and your job is to go teach how you do this. It's something that just speaks to my heart of making it all okay versus it being unfair. Like, can we imagine that maybe we chose this, and then of course we forgot it as we were born. This whole thing about reincarnation, right? And I think about constructs, and like that's a construct that really works for me, and also I like it, and I go with it.
It's got to be super rewarding for you to take a client and actually have them say something like your wife said, I'll just, it's going to be okay. Like once once you get them to that level, for you, it's got to be like, yes, not forget about the money and the business, but just helping them emotionally, mentally. That's got to be super rewarding.
Yes, it fills my whole body and soul. Like when someone, we call it waking up, right? Like, oh, I thought I was trapped by whatever, the fact that I can only have half as many staff as I need, or my boss is really difficult to work with, or, anything that we all face. That is the reality you're in, right? But it's not the entirety of your reality.
How long have you had? So when did you say, I'm leaving EDS, I'm quitting my comfy job, and I am starting my own practice, which had to be scarier than hell, I'm guessing.
It was scary. It was scary. I mean, so what happened was, in fall 2008 was the giant crash of the stock market.
Okay.
Everybody, everybody puckered. So at that point, HP said, okay, we're not going to have a coaching practice. We want you to go and be a leadership development trainer, because we're going to keep that program, but we're going to take out the individual one-on-one coaching as an internal capacity for our execs.
And for you, you're like, ooh, you're taking away the thing I like to do the most.
Yes, that's right. So I said, so I got my paltry 4-month severance, but it was nice, right?
Hey, that's a nice little runway to get started.
After 20 years, yeah. So anyway, and then my wife and I actually moved to Istanbul, and I started a coaching practice in Istanbul.
Hold on, let me just take a pause. You get the 4-month severance.
Yeah.
You decide, I'm going to start my own practice, and I'm going to move to another country.
Yeah, where I knew nobody, didn't know the language, never been there.
How did that? All right, let's just walk me through. How did that even happen that you were going to move? Well, how'd you pick that there? How'd you come to that?
So my wife actually started applying for jobs at universities around the world. So she got a job in Istanbul. She got 4 jobs. One was in Istanbul.
I see.
So that was nice, right? Because we had an apartment, we had, a small salary we were dealing with. So, but I said to her at that moment, after I left HP, that it's going to be really hard for me to move in like 5 years. But I can move right now, because I had like a quarter of a practice I developed on the side while I was working for them. Yeah.
I see. But so you and her, so you take this severance, she gets this job in Istanbul, and she's like, so what are you going to do? and you're like, I'm going to start my own leadership practice, and I'm just going to come with you.
Yeah, exactly. And I will tell you, the weird thing, makes you appreciate America. So if you establish a firm in Turkey, this is of course 10 years ago, I imagine it's about the same now, but you had to file monthly taxes with an accountant.
Really?
And it cost 500 euros a month for an accountant to file your taxes for you. You couldn't do it yourself. And first of all, I didn't speak Turkish, so I would have been screwed. Right, so mind-blowing how difficult. And I got to tell you, the number of documents that I signed to establish a nameplate company was like the number of documents when you buy a house. It was like 30 documents, right?
How did you get clients? I mean, you didn't even know anybody. How'd you establish your business?
So relentless networking. I mean, it started with, I put on Facebook, okay, I know nobody in Istanbul. Anybody's got any connections for me?
Okay.
And so my ex-girlfriend, who's a lovely lady, still friends with her, she worked with somebody at Lafarge who was Turkish.
Okay.
And he connected with me, his best friend in Istanbul, who connected with me, a good friend of his, who actually had a process consulting firm. So he didn't have leadership practice, but he had a process consulting firm.
Ooh, now all of a sudden you could be a service that he provides. There's a partnership there of some kind, or referrals or whatever.
Yeah. And all right. There's also a British guy who was a coach who had more work than he could handle, and he brought me on.
And then are you coaching Americans or people that speak English or go ahead?
Well, specifically Turks. I've said this. Anybody in the world who's got $100 million coming across their desk every year speaks English.
Gotcha. All right. Good. Okay. All right. So now your practice is off and running. You're living in Turkey. Yeah. Life's moving along fine. Then what happened? Then at some point you guys decide to come back to the U.S.
We did after 18 months, because as you can kind of tell, I'm a pretty chatty guy. I like to talk to everybody, right?
Yeah.
So I could talk to my clients, but I couldn't talk to the person standing waiting for the bus.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Or even people that did speak English, they don't get any kind of subtle humor, right? I mean, I have great credit for anybody who speaks second language. I've never accomplished that myself. But you can't make a dry joke with someone who, unless
Did you go to your wife? And this is your wife now, right?
Yes, this is my wife now.
Did you go to your wife and did you say, "Hey, please, I want to move back"?
I did. Yeah, she wanted to stay another year, but she could tell I was just
Okay.
really needing that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And your practice is going fairly strong at this point.
Yeah, I walked away from a full book of business in Turkey.
Wow. All right. And then you guys decided Colorado to come back?
We did. Yeah. This is where. Yeah.
Where's your wife? Is she from Colorado?
She's actually from Ohio, but we met in Colorado. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I mean, coming back to Colorado, you're probably like, I mean, this is a pretty awesome place to live, right? Compared to.
It is. Well, right now at 28 degrees or whatever, I'm thinking I should have picked San Diego. As I get older.
Oh, so now when you come back, is it start all over with a book of business, or did you have a couple of clients? You're like, hey, I'm coming back. How'd you do that?
It was pretty bare bones. I think I had maybe one or two clients. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. But your wife had her job, so you're doing okay.
At that point, she did not have a job. Yeah.
You guys moved back to Colorado and you have like two clients and she's got no job. Okay. That's a little risky.
It was. Yeah. But.
Okay. Yeah. And that was in, when was that? When did you move back?
That would be 2011. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And now here you are 8 years later, super strong practice. So give us now, as of today, your practice now, give us just a nice overview of what it is, who your average client is, and talk about some of those things, if you don't mind.
Yeah, not at all. So probably half my practice is kind of Fortune 500, mostly SVP and C-level. I probably have a couple of VPs.
Okay.
And then also kind of established companies, usually like with Dan Konisberg up at Campminder.
Okay.
Connected us, so it's someone who has built a company and wants to improve their leadership, right? So often entrepreneurs who get to a certain size, they know their business, but now they have to be able to scale their knowledge, right? And they got to be able to lead humans. And often people don't know how to do that.
Is that the majority is the majority of your client base some like that, an entrepreneur that all of a sudden like, oh shit, I'm a CEO and I have 30 employees and I don't know is that your?
I'd say half and half. So half of that, half the small, again, kind of medium size, and then half big companies. I mean, I coach in the C-suite at a couple of Fortune 500 companies. So 1,000 people working for, that individual. Much different scenario.
Okay. And are they calling you to say, I need somebody to talk to like a therapist, or are they calling to you to say, I just want to be a better leader, or I want to enjoy my life more, or I want to be a more positive person, or all the above?
I would say, if I was going to put here's my kind of my classic client is an executive, whether or not it's big company or smaller company, who has the skill. They just don't necessarily have the gravitas of someone who can walk and stand in front of the whole company or 1,000 people and say, okay, here's what we're going to do, or to face the the CEO or to face the board and say, well, Phil, I'm not sure you're thinking about that the way you might. Right. So what the CEO really needs in their senior population is someone who can tell them the truth.
Yes, because most people won't. The employees sugarcoat stuff. Yeah, all of the above. Yep.
Yeah. So I had this is kind of classic guys, 42 SVP at a large IT firm, and did not like what his CEO was going to do because he really thought it was the wrong decision. And there's some history that he didn't think. The CEO is fairly new. CEO wasn't necessarily familiar with. And so I said, okay, are you willing to walk into the CEO's office and put your job on the line right now? Say, I cannot agree with this decision, and I can't stand in front of my staff and say what you're asking me to say.
And when you asked him that, of course, in his brain, he's like, I got a mortgage, I got a kid in college, I got this, I got this, I got this. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But this is so this is the question, like, what do you want your life to be about? What do you want your leadership to be about? Because there's kind of two kinds of people that are saying, I believe in myself, and if I lose this job, I'll get another one. I mean, he's got a pretty big, sweet gig, and he skyrocketed. He went from director to SVP in 2 years.
Okay.
So it's a lot of jump, right? And you got the salary to go with it. But if you make your life about, making high six figures or whatever the number is, then you're not going to have followers. I mean, nobody follows someone who's chasing the dollar. That's a good point.
That's a good point. I do agree. The communication, just getting these guys to communicate with each other, right? Guys, girls, just everybody's afraid to communicate, at least from my experience. And I've been a CEO and a COO of a couple of $40 million companies. And I want to talk a little bit about how I can relate. But the one thing I know for sure is people just don't communicate clearly, or they're hiding stuff because they're either protecting a position or they're protecting their own personal finances. They're afraid they're going to put themselves in danger. So everybody, lies to each other to a certain degree, or they don't communicate clearly because they're all doing this little dance. And that just used to drive me nuts. And so sounds like you help people be brave enough to communicate clearly and honestly. It sounds like that's a huge piece of what you do. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's absolutely. I might say, this. I like, brave is one word. It's a good one. The word I probably would use is committed.
Okay.
Are you committed enough to your values, right? Like in this guy's example I was giving, there's going to be cuts in this guy's department, this SVP department, and he had already made cuts, and other people had sandbagged, and it just wasn't fair, to do like here's another 10% across the board. It's like, wait a minute, across the board? No, I went to bat for the team, and now you're asking me to act like that never happened again. I can't do that. Right? It's not right. It's not in integrity with what the team has already put together. And so that was really my question: is how committed are you to these 1,000 people that work for you?
I see. And
then the bravery kind of comes, right? Whenever we make it about us, so like I was saying, another CEO the other day, when what's happening for you is about you, you will not feel fulfilled because he really wanted more fulfillment. You will never get there. You have to, and this is a beautiful human who's so good at connection, and that's really his superpower. And I say, look, if you make your leadership in life about helping people be connected, and you are so good at this, you have more in your little finger in terms of making people connect really than most people have in their whole body. And if you try to help people, because this is what we really want as humans, right? Is to be connected. It's one of our core needs.
Do you do a lot more individual coaching like that, or do you get executive teams and make them communicate, or both?
Most of my work is with the exec, and then a couple times a year, an exec will say, "Okay, I want you to come work with my team, right? I want you to bring what we're working with to my team." Okay. But I don't lead in my practice with team work. I lead in team work.
Okay. Yeah, the communication piece. I'm really glad you touched on that. I don't know what percentage of businesses fail simply because communication is poor, but it's got to be super high. Even if they have a great product or a great service, you get these executives that just don't communicate. Everybody's.
So here's the other piece on that, Steve, before we leave that point. So there's this thing about bravery or commitment, what do you stand for? But there's also this piece about compassion. Like we often, when somebody else is playing the game, or it doesn't have the courage to speak the truth, or they're positioning themselves.
Yep.
And we go into judgment about those people, right? Then they become what we call the other. Oh, those people don't play it straight. Those people are sandbagging, right? Or that guy.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
And that will kill you as a leader. You have to actually we're all on the path, man, right? Like nobody here is Jesus or Buddha. If they were, then we'd have the the religion of, whatever, Steve Urban or whoever it
Right.
is, right?
Right.
So just compassion of like, oh, that person is struggling right now. They're afraid. And really, when we got to break some of this stuff down, like if you look at behaviors like arrogance, so anybody that's arrogant, I can guarantee you, and we all have arrogant people in our lives. They're terrified. Right?
Absolutely. I totally agree. I completely agree. Yeah. It's a self-defense almost mechanism because they're really scared inside. Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have and I mean we all have stories, right? And some are really horrifying. But when you see an arrogant behavior as a leader, whether or not it's your boss, a peer, if you can see that that person got scared a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they just haven't had the right situation where were able to get unscared or back settled inside themselves. So they're still using this arrogance as a shield. If you can see that and then start interacting with the scared child that's underneath the arrogant exec, that your ability to influence will be 10x.
That is awesome advice. I will tell you, when I was preparing for the podcast, and keep in mind, it was great for me to prepare because I've ran companies, right? Maybe not Fortune 500, but it's still, even if you're running a $40 million company, you still got the same fears and the same things happening to you. And, I was preparing last night and this morning, and I thought, boy, if I would have known Steven, especially when I got the first captain job,
right.
that first 12 months, first 24 months of being in charge, it is a lonely place. And I did not realize how lonely that position was until I was in it, because it's just like you said earlier, you're standing up in a conference room and there's 250 people looking at you to say the right thing and make the right decision. And guess what? When you're done with that little conference speech, you're going to go back to your little hotel room at the conference by yourself and lay there and wonder if you said the right thing.
Right.
And so I really thought about you, and I thought, God, I wish I could have called him, because it's a lonely place. And a lot of executives, a lot of CEOs, at least I think, you're the expert at this, not me. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, but there's nobody for them to talk to, and they can't really share.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, they can't share everything for certain financial or investor reasons. And then they also don't want to show too many emotional scars, right? They want to appear to be strong and confident.
Yeah.
They can't just call their senior VP and go, "Hey man, I'm really scared. Can you come up to my hotel room and talk to me for a little bit?"
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And I think that's exactly right. I think everybody needs a skilled person to talk to, and there's regardless of kind of what your position is, right? And could be a coach, could be a therapist, can be a good friend or a spouse.
Okay.
But it's so different. Like my spouse and I support each other really well. But do we take an hour and just talk about me, what I'm really facing? Like, that's a long time, right? Normally, usually I meet with my clients for an hour and a half. So just to have another brain and heart available, it's kind of like you can unknot so many things just because you have more room. It's kind of like you just have this extra person, right? We call it shared attention, and it creates some space. And also, I'm not in your drama, right? I mean, I have my own drama. I have my own coach, because I have my own fears and things that knot me up, and so I need that, right?
And I found, God love my wife, she listens to all the podcasts, so let me just apologize ahead of time before I say this. I mean, when I was running those companies, I tried to relate and talk to her, but the reality is she couldn't really fully understand, right? She didn't really understand what I was going through. She tried really hard, so it is good to have somebody else, I think, for sure, that can really relate. Yeah.
And then we have the other big part that I want to say about good leadership coach is this capacity building. So we have these situations where, like, hey, I'm going up, I'm going to do my quarterly town hall. I'm concerned, I'm afraid, because lots of reasons, right? I think I've screwed up about things, or whatever's causing that fear. But then we really want to we want to deal with whatever is happening, but then also like, okay, so how are you holding what your role is here in this? You know, often we have, especially really good guy CEOs, right, take so much responsibility for all the families. You know, you talk about these 250 employees in your.
Yep.
So my guess is, you know, you had some concern like, hey, I'm
Absolutely.
responsible for 1,000 people, right? Because we have all these families.
It just makes it more stressful when you get to know their wife and kids. Then you're like, oh Jesus, they're all dependent on me.
Right. So that's one way to hold it, right? Is they're all dependent on you, and the other way to hold it is, so we're a team, right? Actually, I am but one. And, you know, Peyton Manning was a big reason that the Broncos won the Super Bowl, but he was not the only reason.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if Peyton Manning is thinking that it's on his shoulders and he's not part of a team, even though, because he's the captain, the quarterback, then he's actually minimizing what's happening around him.
Man, that's powerful. That is powerful stuff. Wow. You know what my number one fear was? Do you ask the question that way when you talk to them? Do you say, what's your number one fear? I don't know if that's a question you ask in part of your practice, but I'll tell you what my number one fear was as a C-level guy was, if I mess this up, what am I going to do next? If I screw this up, what happens if I mess this up? What's it going to do to my quote track record or my reputation if the company fails and they fire me? Then what am I going to do? Like that thought, even though I was trying to make good decisions for the business, that was always back there. Like, oh man, what if this doesn't make it? I don't know if other CEOs you talk to have that fear, but I know that was one for me.
Well, you know, certainly, you know, everybody does, right? I mean, so what I come back with is this question of the ultimate question, right? What do you want written on your tombstone?
And it's not going to say best CEO ever.
And you probably don't even want that, right?
No.
You know, profits increase.
Right.
Here lies Steve Urban.
Yeah.
Here.
Best EBITDA 2019, right? Like it's not, nobody cares.
Yeah. And I use this thing that I call the Hitler test, which is like, often people say, oh, you know, I want to be really productive. I want to make a big impact. I want to write history. Okay. Yeah, also all true about Hitler. Right? So that would be a fail of the Hitler test. Like, you actually have to want to impact people's lives positively.
That's good stuff. That is good stuff. That's good. And that's really what you're doing, right? That's really what you're doing right there. You're helping them make an impact, make a positive impact.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
On the fear, right? This is the thing. Like, okay, I hope I don't screw this up. What's my track record? Well, once I start realizing, like, okay, well, what I really want on my tombstone is enormously helpful, right? Enormously helpful human, great mentor. Those things, like, okay, well, whether or not, you know, I talk to CEOs actually who have gone bankrupt, right? Had a firm, lost it because whatever reason. One of the guys I work with said, you know, that's when I got my wings, is when my firm went bankrupt. Because,
right.
Yeah, right. And that's really the reality. And again, if you can get that in your body, you know, then your power goes way up, right?
What do you say about this? Because if you would have called me, if somebody would have said, go see Steven back in 2010, I would have said, I don't have time. And how much does that cost? I mean, I would have, just to be perfectly honest, I would have reacted that way. I would have said, I don't have time. And how much does that cost? Yeah. How do you get past that, those, you know, hurdles?
So I say in my sales pitch, I say, okay, so what I guarantee is 10X in time and money, if that's what you want.
Okay.
So if you can't see after 1 hour with me in a conversation, if you can't see how you can get, you know, I usually meet with clients 3 hours a month, right? Hour and a half, couple times. If you can't see how we can get 30 hours back a month, then you should.
Okay. All right. So that's your pitch. Is like, hey man, let's just talk for 3 hours. And then if it doesn't help you, go do something else. I mean, okay.
Yeah, by 10X. I mean, by a lot.
That's great.
You should, if you're an entertainment coach, you should get greedy in terms of what you want.
Do you have employees, or is it just you?
I just have a bookkeeper. So that's it. And I have some colleagues I work with. people have been after me for a long time, say, oh, you should build a concern. And I say, well, I don't want to do that. I get that. I get why that, I get if I was, Tony Robbins, and I had, whenever Tony Robbins is done, he could sell his thing for obviously a lot of money.
Yeah.
But that's just not what I'm up to. I'm really up to working with people one-on-one. That's what I want to do. I don't want to build a thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It shows that if you wanted to build a big firm, you would have already done that. I think your passion is helping people individually, and you're super rewarded by it. I think you can feel it on you that it's very emotionally rewarding for you. And if that makes you a nice living, great. I don't have to have a big firm with 10 employees. I don't have to have all that.
Yeah, for sure. I would say without question, I would do this for 20% of what I make. There's no question.
That's when you've found professional happiness, right? And it's the same for me. I'm making, Riderflex is a shit ton of fun, but obviously I'm making less than I was when I was an executive, but I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't, if you said, hey, get on an airplane and start doing that again and make I was like, nah, it's okay. I really don't want to do that. Is the best way for people to, get a hold of you? Should they just go to the website, StevenMorrowLeadership.com, or do you prefer another contact point?
That's fine. I mean, there's a contact thing on there. My phone number's on there. You can call me up,
okay.
All the blah, blah.
Okay. And they can just call you directly. Your cell phone number's right on the website.
Can you believe it? 2019. Every once in a while I get some spam, but I think the web guys hit it so that robots can't pick it up. So I don't get a whole lot of noise too much.
Okay. Are you taking new clients, or do you have some bandwidth to take some?
I'm pretty full. I have one slot in 2020, and I have a guy knocking on the door, but he hasn't signed up yet, so it's pretty tight.
Now, if you get 5 huge new clients from this podcast, does that mean I get free services? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. Yeah, I would love to meet you in person and talk to you, but obviously you don't talk to people for free for a living. But I would love to talk to you more one-on-one. You do have a and I've always been skeptical. I'm just telling you. I'm just being completely honest. And when back when I was, of course, I'm at 52, I'm still cocky, but I was really cocky when I was in my 30s and 40s. Yeah. If somebody would have said, you need to see a coach, I would have been like, whatever. Like, I don't need all that. But as I get older, I definitely see a value, and you have a very welcoming, warm personality. Like I could see going up to the mountains next to a campfire with you and just spilling my entire life right there.
I would love that. It's such a privilege. A client texted me yesterday, say, thank you so much. I spent the whole day with them. We flew from DC into Denver, which is really nice because usually I get on planes myself.
Right.
But he wanted to come here and just get out of his drama. And then he texted me and said, thanks for yesterday. And
that's awesome.
I just texted back. I have no words. I'm just so grateful. And it really is such a privilege to have people share.
Yeah. Deep stuff. They share stuff with you they probably don't share with very many people, I'm guessing.
That's very true. Yeah. It's a real privilege. Yeah.
It sounds like a rewarding profession. I'm super, super happy to know you. Congratulations on the business you have built. Would love to meet in person as well.
Okay, well, let's set that up. Are you up in Boulder? Is that where you?
I'm near Loveland. Going
okay.
Yeah, just outside of Loveland. Yeah, and we all work virtually, so no office. Do you have an office, or do you just travel to where your clients are?
I just have my home office. Yeah. A lot of people do, but yeah.
Nah. We have my kitchen is right in there where I'm about to walk in there and get a cup of coffee. So I got the home office too. Steven, thank you so much. I appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast.
My pleasure, Steve. Thank you.
Take care.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.